It smelled of varnish and sawdust, not of war. In a dim hangar outside Hamburg, German engineers in white coats, their sleeves already stained with graphite and oil, gathered around a wreckage under floodlights. A mosquito, forced down in a farmer's field, lay almost intact and disassembled on trestles. Its pale wooden panels looked absurdly domestic, as if stolen from a carpentry shop rather than the sky. They had been told this was the fastest bomber the British possessed, capable of outrunning Messerschmitts and Focke-Wulfs. The claim seemed impossible to men who trusted steel and rivets. Dr. Hines Hankle, a senior materials analyst from the Luftwaffe Ministerium, adjusted his spectacles and tapped a panel with a knuckle. The sound was not metallic, but dull and resonant, like knocking on a coffin. "Plywood," he murmured, disbelief creeping into his voice. Technicians laughed at first. "A wooden bomber," one said. "The English must have run out of aluminum." Outside, rain hissed against the hangar roof. Inside, the sharp, sweet chemical scent of phenolic resin clung to clothes and throats. They catalogued components with the precision of surgeons. No rivets, no welds. Each panel was bonded, not bolted. The seams gleamed, so smooth they reflected the lamps like polished marble. When Hankle tried to separate two layers with a chisel, the blade snapped. He frowned. "This is not carpenter's glue," he said. "Whatever bonded these layers was stronger than the wood itself." Under a magnifying lens, fibers fused together like the grain of living tissue. The craftsmanship unsettled them. Every curve had been molded with a sculptor's precision, each contour reducing drag, channeling air, hiding strength beneath elegance. The laughter faded. The more they touched the mosquito, the less they mocked it. By midnight, the floor was a scatter of sawdust, sketches, and coffee cups. Hankle sat back, rubbing his temples, surrounded by fragments that refused to make sense. The numbers on his clipboard didn't lie. A toy-looking aircraft had achieved speeds their best metal bombers couldn't match. Somehow, wood had outmatched steel. He stared at the pale curve of a wing and whispered, "How?" In 1938, while Europe still believed the future belonged to mechanized steel, one man stood before the Air Ministry with a proposal that sounded almost sacrilegious. Jeffrey de Havland, tall, composed, quietly stubborn, unfolded blueprints for a bomber that defied doctrine. No defensive turrets, no heavy armor, and most daringly, built almost entirely of wood. The officials smiled politely, waiting for the punchline. When none came, they dismissed him. Metal, they said, was the future. Wood belonged to the past. De Havland didn't flinch. He saw arithmetic the bureaucrats would not. Aluminum was finite, shipping strained, factories already committed to fighters and heavy bombers. Britain's countryside, he knew, was full of workshops, piano makers, violin craftsmen, cabinet makers, men with skill in shaping wood, but no work for the metal war. What if their hands could build something lighter, faster, quieter? His company had experimented for years with laminated construction for racers and light aircraft. He proposed scaling the technique. Thin birch veneers, balsa cores, bonded with a synthetic adhesive. The technique, laminated monocoque, existed in furniture and instrument making. De Havland turned it into an equation of survival. Every ounce saved in armor could be spent on speed. If the aircraft could outrun fighters, it needn't fight. When war came in 1939, the idea seemed frivolous. The Air Ministry demanded fortresses of metal. But war humbles certainty. By 1940, after France fell and the Blitz began, shortages forced reconsideration. De Havland returned with a prototype. Reluctantly, the ministry allowed one experiment.
In autumn 1940, the first Mosquito took shape. Piano builders sanding wings, violin makers carving the nose, and furniture shop adhesives turned into aircraft skin. The glue, a phenolic resin, when cured under heat, bonded veneers into a single, light, resilient shell. Neither merely wood nor plastic, but a new structural material. On 25 November 1940, the prototype, painted training yellow, rolled onto Hatfield's runway. Jeffrey de Havland, Jr. climbed in. Engines roared, twin Merlins trembling like caged beasts, and the aircraft leapt forward, then upward, with a weightless urgency. Within seconds, it climbed and accelerated beyond expectations, speeds that outpaced contemporary fighters. The Air Ministry observers, silent at first, whispered in disbelief. A wooden plane had outrun metal and myth. De Havland walked his workshop alone that night, hand resting on lamina, still warm from curing, feeling a strange warmth of promise. The world, he thought, would never see war quite the same way again.
When the Mosquito entered service, it carried no guns and no gunners. 2 men sat shoulder to shoulder in a tight cockpit. The flight manual was brutally simple. If intercepted, do not fight, run. Trust the engines. Keep the throttle wide open. Pilots trained on lumbering Wellingtons and Blenheims found the Mosquito alien, slim, graceful, and unprotected. But its advantages were mathematical. Speed was armor, lightness, survival. On 20 September 1941, a formation from No. 105 Squadron took off for a daylight raid on Oslo. Precise, low-level, and gone before enemy fighters could react. Radar detected blips that accelerated off their screens. All aircraft returned. In January 1943, a Mosquito recon flight penetrated Berlin in daylight and returned. The Luftwaffe's fighters scrambled and could not close. Press headlines called it the Wooden Wonder. German pilots muttered a darker name, the Devil of Wood. The aircraft's reputation spread. Orders came down the chain. Do not pursue a Mosquito unless conditions are perfect. But where the Mosquito delighted British morale, it humiliated German engineers. To them, it was not merely a tactical problem, but a scientific insult. Somewhere in those smooth panels lay a secret the Reich had to uncover. When a reconnaissance Mosquito went down in a marsh near Hamburg in spring 1943, the find ignited obsession. The wreckage smelled faintly of resin and smoke. It did not burn. Transported to a secret analysis hangar, it lay under harsh lamps like a patient on an operating table. Engineers accustomed to steel and rivets peeled back veneers with surgical care. Beneath birch veneers, they found honeycombed balsa cores and layers fused so seamlessly they seemed grown rather than assembled. Tests puzzled Hankle. The laminated composite bore almost twice the load of aluminum at half the weight, resisted vibration and heat, and did not fail catastrophically. When a hydraulic press shattered the wood, the adhesive bond held. Chemical analysis revealed a phenol formaldehyde thermoset, a resin that cured into an impervious matrix bonding wood fibers on a molecular level. Where German casein glue softened with humidity, this British resin hardened with heat.
The discovery stung. Germany's chemical industry had produced marvels, but phenolic resins required feedstocks now diverted to explosives and fuels. Even if they'd known the formula, they lacked the capacity. The Mosquito was not merely fast, it was practical genius. Molded fuselages from furniture shops, glued into airtight shells that needed no heavy internal bracing. The structure flexed under stress and returned, absorbing energy instead of shattering. When Hankle presented samples to Luftwaffe Command, 2 pieces lay on the table, aluminium and laminated birch. The wooden sample bent and sprang back. The metal stayed deformed. "Gentlemen," he said, "we have been building the wrong kind of strength." Pride, however, is stubborn. Some officers scoffed. Others demanded a German copy, a mock insect to sting the mosquito. The project, mockingly called the Mücke, was born more from pride than prudence. But imitation is not invention. The Reich's engineers substituted available pines for imported balsa and improvised adhesives for the British phenolics. The wing section that had weighed 280 kilograms in the Mosquito swelled to 410 kilograms in the German mock-up. Under heat and humidity, the substitute softened. Reports of adhesive instability were downplayed. Production orders, once issued, ignored inconvenient truths. The Mücke moved from blueprints to prototypes amid air raids and shortages, built in the very furniture shops Germany now commandeered. The Mosquito had been born of creativity and craft, the Mücke of desperation.
Under floodlights, the mock-up looked convincing. Twin engines, smooth fuselage, identical silhouette. But the illusion dissolved when it left the ground. On its maiden flight, the test pilot, a man whose name will be recorded in reports and then forgotten, pushed the controls hard to test acceleration and handling. At first, the aircraft responded plausibly, then betrayed its compromises. Glue softened, panels shivered, and the heavier wooden sections strained the airframe. Where the Mosquito had danced with the wind, this imitation groaned against it. The prototype returned, battered but intact. The engineers' notebooks filled with corrections, and the high command with impatience. Pride had demanded an answer. Reality had given them a problem. In that hangar, among the scent of glue and wet wood, something fundamental had shifted. The war had become not only a contest of weapons and tactics, but of materials and imagination. The question was no longer whether the Mosquito worked. That had been proven in iron and flame. But how far ingenuity could carry a nation that learned, in the middle of war, to build beauty into survival.